3 years ago, I was living in a rundown apartment in Riverside, broke and barely holding on. My only sofa was a stained love seat left behind by the last tenant. It sagged, reeked of cigarettes, and felt like sitting on broken springs. Every night after work, I dreamed of a real couch. I couldn't afford one, so I scrolled Craigslist's free section religiously. Most posts were junk moldy mattresses, broken chairs, but then, one day, I saw it. The title read, "Free couch, must pick up." The photos showed a dark grey sectional, clean and modern. The description was short, good condition, no pets, no smoking. The owner, David, sent me an address in Woodcrest, about half an hour away. I didn't own a truck, so I borrowed my friend Mark's. Excited, I set out after work. But the further I drove, the stranger it felt. Streetlights vanished, houses disappeared. Soon it was just me, the dark road, and endless orange groves. When I reached Eucalyptus Avenue, my GPS announced I had arrived. At the end of a gravel driveway sat a decaying ranch house, its yard full of weeds and junked cars. A dim yellow light glowed from one window. On the porch sat the couch. I texted David, and within seconds the door creaked open. Two men walked out. Both were bulky, shaved heads, maybe late 30s. One introduced himself as Dave, the other as his brother Rick. They didn't smile, they just stared. We carried the couch to my truck. Strangely, it was light to light. Dave then said, "The cushions are inside. Come grab them real quick." My stomach dropped. Why drag the couch out but leave the cushions inside? "I'll get them," I said. Dave's face tightened. "No, we need your help." His tone shifted. Rick moved closer, hands hidden in his hoodie. That's when I smelled it, something foul, chemical, drifting from the open door. Before I could react, Dave gripped my arm like iron. Rick shoved me toward the doorway. My body froze in panic. Then instinct kicked in. I slammed my elbow into Rick's ribs, twisted free, and bolted into the yard. "Get him!" Dave roared behind me. I ran blindly across the gravel road, lungs burning. Headlights suddenly appeared in the distance. I threw myself into the middle of the road, waving and screaming for help. The car slowed. An older man rolled down his window, shocked as I yelled, "They're trying to kill me." He unlocked the door, and I dove inside. "Drive," I screamed. He hit the gas without hesitation. At the gas station, I called 911. Police escorted me back, but the house was silent. The couch still sat on the porch, waiting like bait. Dave and Rick were gone. The ad was deleted. The phone number disconnected. 4 weeks. I barely slept. I saw a car tailing me more than once. One evening, I spotted Rick in a grocery store parking lot just staring before vanishing. I reported it, but police couldn't help. I changed my locks, installed cameras, and I never checked Craigslist free posts without remembering that yellow lit house, that smell, and Dave's voice saying, "We need your help." Last year, I went on a work trip where the budget was tight. Most of the decent hotels were either booked or way out of my price range. After some quick searching, I found a small roadside motel that had a room for cheap. The reviews were mixed, but I told myself it was just for one night. I'd sleep, check out early, and be on my way. When I pulled up, I knew immediately it wasn't the kind of place you'd brag about staying in. The neon vacancy sign was buzzing like a giant insect, half the letters burnt out. Only 2 other cars sat in the lot, both of them older models covered in dust. The building itself looked worn down, with peeling paint and long curtains hanging crooked in the windows. Inside the office, the smell hit me first, stale coffee mixed with cigarette smoke that seemed to have seeped into the walls. The man behind the desk didn't greet me. He barely looked up from the small TV playing behind him. Without a word, he slid the key across the counter, his eyes dull and uninterested. His only words were, "End of the hall. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. My room was at the farthest corner of the building, where the hallway light flickered and hummed. Unlocking the door, I found a space that looked almost frozen in time. Faded wallpaper, a stiff bedspread patterned with strange shapes, and a bolted-down TV sitting on top of a scratched dresser. The bathroom smelled faintly of bleach, but there was a dampness in the air, as if the place never fully dried out. It wasn't welcoming, but I was exhausted from driving. I tossed my bag onto the bed and jumped into the shower. The water pressure was weak, but it was hot enough to wash off the road dust. When I came back into the room, towel around my shoulders, I felt slightly better. For a few moments, I almost convinced myself it wasn't so bad. But then I noticed something strange. The TV was turned off, but there was a faint glow, not on the outside, but coming from deep within the screen. A tiny red glint, so small that if I hadn't been sitting directly across from it, I might have missed it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but the longer I stared, the more it looked like the reflection of glass. I leaned closer, my chest tightened when I realized what it resembled, the faint reflection of a camera lens. My hands went cold instantly. I stepped back, staring at the TV, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Shaking, I walked over and pulled the TV slightly forward. On the back, I found it, a small, perfectly drilled hole that led straight through the casing and into the wall behind it. My heart pounded as the reality sank in. Someone had rigged the TV with a hidden camera, positioned to capture the entire bed in the center of the frame. Panic flooded me. I grabbed my jacket and tossed it over the screen, then quickly snapped a photo on my phone. My mind was racing. Was it live? Was someone watching right now? Or was it just recording to be watched later? The thought of strangers, maybe the staff, maybe worse, having footage of me, made me feel sick. I tried to keep calm and went to the front desk. The same man was there, still half slouched behind the glass. I forced a casual tone and asked about the TV in my room, whether it was broken or had been tampered with. His response made my stomach drop. He smirked slightly, shook his head, and said, "All the rooms are the same." His tone was flat, but his eyes, they flicked quickly toward the parking lot before meeting mine again. That was enough. I smiled back stiffly, nodded, and turned around as if I accepted his answer. Inside, my instincts screamed at me to get out. I walked fast down the hall, shoved my things back into my bag, and bolted for the door. The night air was heavy and damp as I rushed to my car. I shoved the key into the ignition, hands shaking so badly I could barely start it. Just as the engine roared to life, I saw movement near the office. A man in a dark hoodie stepped out from behind the building and began walking in my direction. He wasn't moving fast, but he didn't need to. His presence was enough to send a jolt of terror through me. I floored the gas. My tires screeched as I tore out of the lot without looking back. My pulse hammered in my ears the entire drive. I didn't stop until I reached a brightly lit hotel 20 minutes away, the kind with a lobby full of people and cameras in every corner. From my new room, I finally called the police and explained everything. They listened, said they'd send someone, but I never got a follow-up. When I searched for the motel online, the next morning, the listing was gone, like it had never existed. Even now, the image of that tiny red glow won't leave me. The smirk on the clerk's face, the man in the hoodie stepping out of the shadows, and the worst part, the thought of who else they might have recorded before me, and what they did with that footage. I'll never look at motel TVs the same way again. A few years ago, I was on a late-night drive across state lines. I'd been on the road 4 hours, and exhaustion finally caught up with me. Around midnight, I pulled into a small, cheap-looking motel on the edge of town. It was one of those old places where the paint is peeling and the rooms are arranged in a long strip facing the highway. The vacancy sign glowed faintly, buzzing against the silence of the night. The lobby was empty except for the clerk, an older woman who barely looked up from her crossword as I asked for a room. She didn't make small talk. She slid the key across the counter, muttered, "Room 7, and went back to her puzzle. Something about her indifference unsettled me, but I told myself I was just tired. Room 7 was plain and outdated. A faded floral bedspread covered the lumpy mattress, and the carpet was worn thin in the middle. The bathroom light flickered when I turned it on, and the shower curtain had yellow stains near the bottom. Still, it was a place to sleep. I locked the door, shut the curtains, and collapsed onto the bed. At around 2 a.m., I woke suddenly. At first, I thought it was just highway noise outside. But then I heard it, a muffled scream, a woman's voice, raw and desperate. My entire body froze. I sat up in bed, straining to hear. The screaming came again, louder this time. It was coming from the room next to mine. The walls were thin, and I could hear her crying, pleading, and then suddenly going quiet. A man's low voice followed, angry, but I couldn't make out the words. My heart was racing. I considered calling the front desk, but something told me the clerk already knew. The thought made my stomach twist. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I whispered what I'd heard, gave them the address, and begged them to send someone. The operator told me to stay in my room and keep the door locked. Minutes dragged on like hours. The screaming started again, louder and more frantic, as if she knew time was running out. I pressed myself against the wall, listening, my hands shaking. There were heavy thuds, like furniture being knocked over, followed by silence so thick it made my skin crawl. I kept the lights off, terrified whoever was in there would realize I had heard everything. My phone screen lit up my face as I clutched it, waiting for sirens. I kept imagining the woman breaking free and running down the hallway, or worse, the man stepping into mine. Finally, after what felt like forever, I saw flashing red and blue lights through the crack in the curtains. Police swarmed the motel, banging on the door next to mine. I heard shouting, more cries, and then footsteps rushing up and down the hallway. I didn't move until there was a knock on my door and an officer told me it was safe. They never gave me the full details. All I know is that they took a man out in handcuffs, his clothes smeared with something dark. The woman was carried out on a stretcher, barely conscious. She looked pale, fragile, and broken. The officers asked me a few questions, thanked me for calling, and told me I'd probably saved her life. But as I packed my things and left before sunrise, the motel felt tainted. The silence in that place was heavy, as if the walls themselves had absorbed so many screams over the years. I still can't drive past an old motel without thinking about that night, the muffled cries, the thuds, and the helpless feeling of sitting in the dark, listening to someone fight for their life through a thin wall. Two summers ago, I was driving cross-country when I pulled into a small roadside motel just outside a rural town. It was late, almost midnight, and the only light came from the buzzing neon vacancy sign and a single bulb over the office door. The place looked deserted except for one old pickup truck in the lot. The clerk was a quiet man in his 60s, polite but distant. He gave me a key without much conversation, just saying, "Room 9, around the back." His voice was flat, almost rehearsed, like he'd said the same words 1,000 times. Room 9 was small but decent enough, a bed, dresser, a TV bolted to the wall, and a single window with blinds that didn't quite close all the way. I set my bag down and was about to collapse into bed when I noticed something odd on the ceiling, a small wooden square, an attic door. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just for storage or maintenance. Still, it made me uneasy. I locked the door, left the bathroom light on, and finally fell asleep. Around 3 a.m., a loud creak jolted me awake. My eyes shot to the ceiling. The attic door was slightly open. Not much, maybe an inch, but it hadn't been like that before. My chest tightened, I froze, listening. For a long moment, there was silence. Then came a faint sound, the slow drag of something shifting above me, like knees sliding across wood. My heart pounded so loudly, I thought whoever was up there could hear it. I grabbed my phone and whispered into 911, telling them I thought someone was in the attic of my motel room. The operator told me to stay calm, stay quiet, and that help was on the way. But as I hung up, I heard another creak, heavier this time, as if weight was being lowered. The attic door moved again, opening wider. A pale hand gripped the edge, followed by the faint outline of a face peering down into the room. I bolted from the bed, slammed the bathroom door, and locked it, shaking uncontrollably as I pressed my back against it. Minutes stretched like hours. I heard the sound of footsteps hitting the floor in the bedroom, slow and deliberate, moving around the room, if searching for me. I held my breath, praying the police would arrive in time. Finally, through the bathroom's thin window, I saw red and blue lights flash across the wall. Voices shouted. The footsteps stopped. Then came the sound of the front door being kicked in. The police stormed the room, and I heard a struggle, heavy thuds, someone yelling angrily. When they finally pulled me out of the bathroom, I saw the man they'd caught. He was filthy, clothes torn, eyes wild. He looked like he hadn't seen the sun in weeks. The officer said he'd been living in the motel attic for who knows how long, crawling down at night to steal or worse. Needless to say, I checked out immediately. Even now, whenever I see an attic door in a motel or hotel room, I can't relax. I'll always wonder how many nights people sleep below those doors without realizing someone might be up there, quietly watching.